Hello everyone, welcome back. Tonight, figured I would dive into the Community Toolkit MVVM Lite pack, or MVVM Lite, that's the old name, MVVM package. The 8.0 release came out a while back and I did a video on it, and it turned out it was one of my most popular videos of all time. So when the 8.1 release came out last week, 9 days ago, something like that. Today is January 25th, 2023, for those who care. And it came out January 17th, 18th, something in that vicinity. And last week I had said, hey, it just dropped. Maybe we take a look at it. And I think today is the day. Let's dive in and take a look and see what is there. Real quick, for anybody following for the Material Design project, there is probably going to be a 4.8 release before 5.0. I was hoping to not have to do a 4.8, but there's been a couple bugs and things that have come up that I'm thinking probably need to get fixed to roll out. There's a question about should it be a 4.72 or a 4.8, and I don't know. There will probably be at least one more release before the 5.0 stuff drops. But let's take a look at Community Toolkit stuff, and then we will get back to the brain teaser question in a bit. So a while back, hey look, little me, big me, yeah, that one. I did this video here for the Learn MVVM with the Community Toolkit, and it turns out this was apparently enormously popular. So I was like, okay, let's keep going. It seems like, especially for people getting started with WPF, kind of learning this MVVM framework. For anyone coming to it, I do also have another video here. It's a little bit older. There's nothing wrong in this older video, but I do use some older NuGet packages, specifically MVVM Lite, which this Community Toolkit is a much improved, updated version of. So all of the concepts and all of the WPF stuff that's in there, just be aware that there's some little bit older syntax because it uses an older version of C#, older NuGet packages. So if you're just getting started, dive in. It'll give you a good primer. Take off from there. But if you are building on latest and greatest stuff, check out the other video along with, I guess, this video, and we'll take a look at it. So, Community Toolkit. This guy here, unfortunately, there are multiple docs pages. So I'm just going to point that out. And it's very easy if you aren't paying attention with Google or Bing or your search engine of choice here. You can end up on, for example, this page here, which is the Windows Community Toolkit documentation. And the reason is because there's bits and pieces of these docs that have been sprinkled in for different frameworks. And you'll note right here at the top, this one's for UWP. So if you are hunting for the appropriate documentation page, just take a quick gander along the top. All of the Microsoft Learn refactor stuff is starting to make things better, but it's still a little confusing. What you are looking for is the Learn.NET Community Toolkits. This is what you want to see in your little crumb bar at the top. So this is the guy. Or if you would prefer the GitHub repo, Community Toolkit / Windows Community Toolkit, and you'll note inside of here there's a lot of stuff. And because this started out largely as like a UWP based thing, that is a big reason for some of the confusion in the documentation and naming and that kind of thing. But rest assured, if you are just jumping in, this library is not specific to any given framework. Anything that you want to use MVVM in, we make use of it inside of WPF, WinUI, UWP, Maui, Blazor. We have fun. Yes, I did say Blazor. Blazor's not built for it, but it's still, you can use this to do some pretty cool stuff with it. This is the announcement that dropped. I'm just going to spam the chat with a bunch of links. So January 8th, Sergio always does a great write-up. Sergio, if you're watching, thank you for all of your work on this library. This is by far one of my favorite libraries to work in, so thank you. So let's go through this. I've briefly glanced at this ahead of time, but I have not had a chance to play with all of these features yet. So you'll note what's inside of the Community Toolkit: Common, MVVM, aka Microsoft MVVM Toolkit. Again, this just helps make things a little more confusing. Diagnostics, high performance, all of these things here. I believe there are, oh, maybe it's the course, it's the other one. The other one, I believe, has some reference. And this also doesn't help things as well, that there are some of these things get referenced in different places. And so you can end up searching and landing elsewhere. So Microsoft Learn people, more docs would be greatly appreciated. Okay, so here's a breakdown of the main changes. This one here has actually been kind of on my bucket list. Now, let's break down what this is actually doing. Let's see. Do I have an app? I do. This is something that we're going to look at in a bit. It's my new WPF template. I mean later. Okay, so we have a observable property, and let me just fire up the app and show how this thing works. So this is a .NET new template. And for this very simple demo app, there's a menu with a clear and an exit. If you click it, it counts. If you clear, it clears it. But the important part here is this count and where that's coming from. So this observable property here, so you know, this is a field, but this field is decorated with an observable property attribute. The other key thing is this class is declared as partial. And because this project references the Community Toolkit MVVM NuGet package, and you'll note I am on version 8.1.0 here. This will include the source generators needed in order to generate the appropriate code here. And if we expand this guy out, build files, where is it? Compile time assemblies. Oh, sorry, not there. If we expand out the analyzer section, we can see there. Here are the Community Toolkit MVVM source generators. We can go, okay, show them to me, and then they've got some analyzers in here, which is great. And then, for example, the ObservableProperty generator, this guy here. If we expand him out, we'll see that our main window view model is getting an extra partial created for it. Great. So this is a partial class. And you can see that that little field that I decorated with is now a full-fledged property. So I've got a public int count. This property implements the standard INotify change pattern. See prior YouTube videos in the chat, or if you're on YouTube later, see description. Does the check. There's a couple partial methods here that you can choose to implement if you want for either doing something when count changes. It sets the value, fires it off, raises property changed, and this is ultimately what gets the entire binding engine in WPF kicked into gear. This property change notification tells the binding, hey, time to update, and away we go. So if we go back and look over here on our main window.xaml, boom. This binding here is binding to the counts property, which is an int. We are applying a string format to it that shows the number of clicks. And then there's an extra margin. That's the sum total of how this is working. So what is the new feature in the change? So if you were to take your view model object and run it through something like system.text.json, right, where you might want to go through and say, hey, I actually want to serialize this as JSON, which is great. The problem being is that when you do that, you might not want the default name for the property. So the system.text.json is going to name things like based upon your property names, but sometimes there may need to be a disjoint. Maybe you want one name for your property, but maybe you're bringing in a JSON payload that has a different name. Okay, great. The normal way you would get around this is you would end up having to write your own property, decorate it like this, and then the serialization works just fine. Now you can decorate properties like this. And the one thing I'm going to call out, and this is something that most people don't realize about attributes. You could do this. This has existed for quite a while in C#. It's just that the utility of it was significantly reduced. Let's just slap this guy on. What is it? I think that's a Newton Soft one. System text JSON serialization. What is it? Something property. You know what? JSON required will work just as well. Boom. Okay. With attributes, typically you don't end up specifying this property colon in front of it. But this ability to be able to control the how the property is being applied rather than inferring how the property is being applied. So for example, this observable property, it is inferring that it is property, right? And you'll note it immediately flags and says, hang on, this is not valid on a field because this is actually being set on a field. Even though this thing is called observable property, if we take a look at it, this guy should have attribute usages, and the only place you're allowed to apply it is a field. But there are times where you might want to change how that is being done. Hence, when you set it with this guy here, if we go and look at our generated code again. Boy, I really wish this wasn't so long. Let's see. I understand why it needs to be. It's just annoying. You'll note now that property that we wrote before is now generated here. So this attribute, the JSON required attribute that we specified on the field, is now getting applied to the generated property. This is pretty cool. Now, a couple comments that are worth pointing out before people get too gung-ho on using this. Depending, the use of this should be, or likely will be, somewhat limited. Now, context matters with everything. And depending on your app, there's an idea of persistence ignorance where you probably want the object that you're serializing to not necessarily be the view model that's driving your app. Now, with that said, there's plenty of cases where you might be using this library and you might want to make some sort of data object, raise property changed, and be your serialization. Those are the cases where I see myself using this most. But something where it's like a main window view model, I probably am not going to be serializing this JSON or serializing this down and leveraging this too much. I'm sure there's other cases I'll come up with where it'll be really handy to be able to decorate the generated property with an attribute. Maybe internally, if I want to put my own custom attribute on something, that'll be great. But that is now something that is possible. And at least according to this was the top requested feature, which I can certainly see that. That definitely feels like one of those things that was potentially lacking before. So the other one, and this one actually bit me initially. When the release first launched, I had several projects already using the toolkit. I've got my Dependabot on most of my projects set up to automatically pick up NuGet packages and just automatically pull request them in, which is great. I love getting latest stuff. But there's a bunch of attribute or analyzers that got added to this pack or this NuGet package, and I have warnings as errors turned on in most cases, which meant if any of these analyzers flagged warnings, the PR failed. Which, admittedly, they were mistakes. I shouldn't have done them in the first place. Even though I may know better, it doesn't mean I always do better. And so having an analyzer around definitely helps. So there's a couple interesting ones that this one calls out. So for example, this setup here that they're showing. I'm going to blow that up just a little bit. So they've got a field setting here, and maybe we'll just go demonstrate it with my count property. So you can imagine inside of my relay command where I'm incrementing the count. And right here, I'm going and targeting the generated property. If I were instead, just go ahead and kill this. If I were instead to go through and do something like _count, you'll note I now get this little warning here. So this MVVM-TK, which is the prefix that the library has picked for it. Ooh. Does that actually, do they have pages out for all these? Oh, that is awesome. Love it, love it, love it. This is wonderful. Even better. So when the analyzer flags, you can click on it and go right to a page that will hopefully explain exactly what's going on. But for this one, I can explain. So the idea here is you generally do not want to access the backing field behind your property, specifically an observable property, because the only thing the observable property is adding to this is a comparison check, setting of the value, and raising property changed. So unless you've gone through and implemented one of these partial methods for on count changing, on property changing, on property changed, setting the property should be the default thing that you want to do. And so this analyzer goes through and says, hey, not a big deal. Now in their sample, it's a little more likely that you might run into it if you have a naming scheme like this. My strong preference is that fields get named with underscore because this immediately says problem. If you name your fields without the leading underscore, they can easily be confused with like method parameters and how those typically get named. So some people don't care, some people don't mind it. Follow the coding guidelines in your own repository. However, if you don't have coding guidelines, I would recommend leading underscore for your fields, capital letter for your properties. I think it's probably one of the most common .NET naming conventions out there. Again, some people have very strong opinions on other things. When in doubt, favor consistency in your repo. That's typically the right answer. Don't favor chaos. That's bad. But at a minimum, the extra analyzer there. Now, I am curious, now that I saw that. Come on, give me that link back. I am curious. I kind of want to go through these and look at all of the wonderful things that they ended up flagging. I'm gonna save that. This might be an interesting thing to go and look through all of these. Oftentimes when people write analyzers like this, I'm weird. Say that up front. I enjoy reading documentation. At one point in time, I sat down and read through the C#6 specification, the last one that was published out, going through it bit by bit, and I found that just fascinating. Most people would find it to be a sleep aid, not necessarily something fascinating to get the brain juices going. But if you're like me, this could be kind of cool. Let me drop this. I'll drop this link in if anybody wants to go and peruse. We may come back to that. Okay, let's take a look at what else is in here. So additional analyzers. Oh, the other one, the one that bit me before, and this one's worth showing off because depending on what you're doing. So there are multiple ways you can implement an observable object or INotify property changed. So one is you can just derive from one of the classes that comes from the community toolkit. There's a handful of different ones, and I believe in the docs, if I remember correctly. This one. Yeah, so there's observable object, observable recipient, observable validator, all adding slightly different bits depending on what you need. In general, if you aren't sure, start with observable object. This is generally the one that you're going to use most of the time. So if you aren't sure, start here, but be aware that there are a handful of other ones. But the problem with having to derive from a fixed object is what if, because of whatever situation you're in, your class needs to derive from some other type, right? Maybe you're working in a company that has a rule that says, no, all of our stuff must derive from the following view model thingy because that's our hierarchy, or you're working with some third-party library where you really do need to derive from their base class. In those cases, what you can do is you can actually come in here and say, okay, well, that's fine. Rather than deriving from observable object, there's technically an observable object attribute. And if you decorate a class with an observable attribute, what the generators will do, and we can go and look at this real quick, observable object generator, is it will go through and take the same sort of functionality that you would get by deriving from the base class. So implement INotify property changed, implement INotify property changing, all of the wonderful base methods, the event, on property changed, all of these things that exist in the base class, you can use an attribute and it will kind of tack it onto the side, right? Because we're a partial class, we can just add all of that. However, this shouldn't be your default setting of what to use. Because if you use this attribute on all your view model classes, all of that same code is getting replicated in your assembly every single time you do that. Whereas if you derive from the same base class, the only one object definition needs to be stored in your assembly and you don't bloat it. So This bloats the assembly because now you have a bunch of copies of the exact same methods. So if possible, derive from observable object, do not use the attribute, but be aware that the attribute is there for the cases where you don't control your base class or you need a different base class for some reason, and you still want to bring in all of the goodness of the community toolkit. Which that one bit me because I had a couple instances where I had done exactly this, and it flagged me, appropriately so. It should have, and I went oops and went and fixed it. So we'll go there. Source generator optimization. This one is probably not going to matter to most people, aside from the fact that it works much better, much faster. Everything's quick. That's the summation of all of this. New Roslyn targeting stuff, better diagnostics, stop using symbols, more performance, and everything runs really, really fast. That's pretty cool. We like fast stuff. Fast is good. Fast is very good. There is this cool IObserver extension. So anybody who's used reactive style APIs is familiar with IObservable. IObservable isn't something new. This has been around for a while. It's reactive UI has a bunch of different implementations, and I've seen other libraries. The IObservable interface is not a complicated interface. Is this linked right to it? No, I was hoping it was linked to the IObservable docs. It's not. But an observable just gives you an easy way to effectively watch a stream of events. So in this case, the messenger inside of the MVVM toolkit, it is just an implementation of a pub sub model, meaning a publish subscribe pattern. So you've got two view models that are in different places of your app. You need them to communicate. Perhaps the user logs in and you want to notify the rest of the areas of your application. Hey, user has logged in, do the needful. You might use a messenger for something like that. And typically you would register up for the message. And I think I have I don't know if I put a messenger example in here. I should consider, in this little sample app, I should probably put an a sample showing off the messenger. I know I registered it in my DI container, but I don't think I did. I registered it up, but I did not actually do anything fancier with it. So I should probably do that. Anyway, messenger lets one view model post a message. Anyone who cares to listen to that can get it back. And away you go. Typically by implementing the iRecipient interface or similar, and you get a method called with the message on it. You do stuff, works great. An alternative pattern, especially for people who like reactive sort of fluenty style APIs, is you can do messenger create observable with this guy here. So let's take a look at this. So let's break this down a little bit. So we're gonna do let's see, I want an iMessenger here. Messenger, boom, ding. And then let's just we're gonna sudo this a little bit real quick. Actually, I think I can just pass this down, can't I? I need to be an observable recipient, I believe, for that to work. Boom, 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 boom. Bippity boppity booyah. Okay. So for those people who are interested, observable recipient adds builds on top of observable object, but it adds in this iMessenger into the mix, where you can end up with things like broadcast and posting out messages when things change. So it is a convenient base class for that. And we are going to, when we clear, we're just going to do something like messenger send new, I don't know, count cleared message. So going to be a quick example of how to do messaging. Public record class count cleared message. Something like that. So this is the publish half of the publish subscribe pattern. And now I'm going to do everything in the same view model, but these could be completely disjointed view models. But I've only got one, so I'm just going to use what I got. Okay. So we can do something like, wow, really, Copilot? Sure, thanks. You're on point. You are on point. Okay, so we can register up for the message. You'll note this takes in a recipient and a cleared, and we'll just go here. So to do handle message. All right, so this is one way of registering up for messages to receive it. You do this in something like a constructor when the message is posted. Here, we can prove that this actually works real quick. When the message is posted, this method will be invoked. You will get the message back. If we come here, click, 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 file, clear. And we can see here we are. We've got our recipient. We've got our message. And away we go. Huzzah. I think a cleaner approach that I've more often done is recipient count cleared message. Do that, and then autocode to victory. I'll bring you up next to the other one, just so we can show. And then rather than doing this approach, you can go message register. Yeah, we can just do register all. Like this. And so it'll look at all of our interfaces and register it up. Hey, Justin Bieber, is this a weak event? Yes. That is a great question. So I should say yes, in this instance, it is like a weak event. The key thing to note is when you are registering to receive messages, both of these things are taking in a reference to the recipient, the thing that the instance that is going to be receiving the message. The thing is whether you want your messenger to hold a strong reference or a weak reference is up to you. I'm intentionally just being ambiguous and using the iMessenger interface, but inside of my DI registration, I have defined that iMessenger is going to use the weak reference messenger. There is also, I believe, a strong reference messenger, if you would prefer that. I generally find that I don't want my messenger to be the thing holding references for me. I want it to be, it's there. If the instance is still alive, send it. Otherwise, the stuff that I want holding references, because most of the time these tend to be like services or view models, I'm going to manage the lifetime of those. I'll deal with handling whether it's a strong or a weak reference. I just want the messenger to work and stay out of my way. That's my preference. So I generally will use the weak reference messenger for just about everything. That's also the reason why observable recipient, if you do nothing and you just use the default constructor, it's going to fall into using the weak reference manager by default. So yes, this is a weak reference, but it is only a weak reference because that is how I've defined my iMessenger. It could be a strong reference if you choose to use a different messenger instance, but I like using the weak reference one. So pub submodel, all of this stuff, but here is the new addition. So let's go back to the blog post. So here's the new addition. We can do create observable, right? And this gives us a new pattern. And we'll just copy this guy in for a minute. So rather than registering up this way, we can do this maneuver. So this messenger property is the same one of this instance that I passed down into my base, just in case you're wondering where that came from. So if we go with like count cleared message, we don't really need a where. Let's see, and then let's see, console write line. I don't know what you are doing here. So what is the signature? Observer count cleared. looks off. The signature doesn't seem right, like I've missed something here. Let's just take a quick look. Yeah, this thing wants an IObserver. And yeah, Copilot, you're wrong. Yeah, because this wants an IObserver, not a Lambda. Go and look, because I think oftentimes, unless the toolkit brings in an implementation of IObserver, you typically pull in something like reactive in order to pick it up. Let me look and see, because this doesn't compile out of the gate. I'm curious if there's something added here that is doable but annoying. Yeah. Bring functionality to IObservable. That's cool. I'm curious if in this PR, if this guy brought in any additional stuff. Create observable, subscribe, send. I'm looking to see. Yeah, I'm curious how this thing is picking up the delegate with it. Cannot convert lambda expression because it is an unknown delegate type. So I think what we do is this, start, and because it is not a delegate type, what am I doing wrong here? Because this clearly compiles. Let's see. That's an interesting way of doing it. Create observable, message A. I'm really curious as to how that signature works. Create observable, send, send, send. I'm mostly interested in how this subscribe bit is working. Where is message A defined? Am I just being dumb? I don't think I am. Because it looks like it's just an ha 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 ha. There's the magic sauce. There's the magic sauce. Okay, fine. Bring in reactive. Okay. Okay, fine. We'll go get the NuGet package. We'll go get the NuGet package. I was curious why that sample didn't work. No. NuGet. Oh, I've botched my NuGet config, haven't I? Yes. We're just gonna do that. I don't want to think too hard. In fact, I'm gonna go even further, and I'm gonna just save. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna just nuke. I was working on adding this NuGet config into my template, and it's not correct. Turns out, if you put in a bad NuGet config, you don't get NuGets. But my little template is getting closer. Okay. System. Yeah, that one. Pretty please. Grab you. Install. Okay, there we go. That's where the overload comes from. Okay, so now rather than writing up a method, doing all of that, you get this nice little subscription pattern that you can go through and use to call back. So this, I'm going to rename this to message just so that this is clear. Each time that message is posted, this little subscribe is going to get invoked. And then the other thing you'll note is this is a disposable token. So get rid of the var here. right? So the key thing here is you need to dispose of that. So when you do the observable and you're subscribed and waiting for that, at some point you need to say, I'm all done, and let go of this and clean it up. So just be aware, this would typically go in a using statement, or probably not a using statement because usually you want things to live a little longer than that, but you get to clean it up. So, okay, so let's go back here. Okay, there. So, new create observable. This has always been possible, and for people who like reactive extensions, I feel like people who love that library are already very familiar with writing up their own observable wrappers over things that aren't already IObservable. There's a lot of extensions in there for getting yourself to an observable from like a queryable and enumerable, most of the common base types. So all of those things work. The other thing that came along with this, which, yay, .NET 7 C# 11 support. There wasn't a ton that was like what .NET 7 dropped, and WPF didn't gain a ton. Like there wasn't a lot really there for WPF. WPF gained a bunch, but it wasn't because any of it was specific to WPF. It was just because WPF now runs on .NET 7 and C# 11, and so all of the goodness in the language and framework, WPF just picked up for free. So it's like, great. Things are faster. Things go quicker. New language features. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. And yeah, so all of that was fine. There are a couple of these guys here. These are, I'm trying to think of outside of people. I have never used these types outside of use cases where I've written benchmark tests. So I'll put it that way. If you're getting down to this level, you should be writing like benchmark.net tests to actually ensure that the changes you're making are improving performance. If you're at that level, awesome. If you aren't, these are probably less exciting to you, right? Most people start off just trying to get their code to work. This is now because there's make it work, make it right, make it fast. This is at step 3. Most people spend a lot of time on steps 1 and step 2. Just to be aware. But if you are all the way to step 3 where it's make it fast, and more importantly, you're on a place where they appreciate performance stuff, this is awesome. So there's not a ton in here. I will say Sergio does have a great YouTube video here as well, if people are interested in checking it out. Again, this is by far my favorite toolkit to go through and use. But at least in terms of the 8.1 release, I think that's all of it. At least all the interesting stuff. So rev yourself up to the latest today. You probably should, unless you're like me and you did something that pisses off one of the analyzers, you're probably fine to just upgrade to 8.1. Everything will be more better, and you'll be happier, and it'll be great. At a bare minimum, the generators will run faster. That's a win in my book. So rev it up. Likely won't have any problems. If there are, okay, I want to take a quick look at these analyzers just to see the analyzers that they wrote. I'm always curious to take a look at these. Okay, so don't apply the attribute on a class that already implements the interface. Yeah, that makes sense. Don't do it. Let's see, observable objects. So that's basically the same thing. Okay, so these are going to be, so the 1 through 3 are all the same thing there. I'm guessing, so typically when you do analyzers, it's very common that, or I should say better practice, to group your analyzer numbers by categories. So you'll often note that like certain ranges of analyzers all tend to be the same. Cannot apply to a type that lacks necessary base functionality. Okay. So if you want the recipient functionality, you have to derive from either object or have the attributes. Makes sense. And I think a lot of these analyzers are just going to smooth over cases where people tried the toolkit and it didn't work the way they wanted because they typoed something or didn't use something correctly. So this is just helping people fall into the pit of success. Cannot apply property to fields with validation attributes. Oh, that's interesting. This one surprises me. I get the intent here of you've got a type. It's got an observable property on it. You've decorated it with one of the component model annotations like required, but you didn't derive from the other one. Now, the only thing that makes me kind of twitch a little bit here is this does make the sweeping assumption that this is here to support that type of validation and not something else. Like, there's a lot of things that use the component model annotation for other things. I'm going to keep my eye out for this one because something in the back of my mind is telling me that I've got an example or two where I would end up suppressing this. Does it say? It doesn't say whether this thing flags at what level by default. The other thing is once you see these either warnings or info messages, you can always go into your editor config and adjust the severity of them. So if you're like, nah, in my project, this is actually a warning or an error or whatever, toggle it around. Okay, cannot apply relay commands to methods with a signature that doesn't match one of the existing. Oh, amen. I have seen people do this way too much. So when you're doing relay commands, at the end of the day, what is being generated is an ICommand implementation for you. Because before there was some ceremony around, okay, I've got to declare a property for the relay command. I've got to assign it in. I've got to link it up to the delegates of my method. Yeah, you don't have to do that. You just specify the attribute, away you go. The source generator is what people tried to implement in a long time ago with libraries like Caliburn, where it was all convention based, where you would just write a public method and then Caliburn would do magic behind the scenes to try to wire everything up for you. The problem is when it didn't work because it was convention based, you didn't get a lot of warning as to why. Versus now we have source generators, so there's a little bit more checks and balances, which I like better. I hate convention. Well, I should say hate. I usually dislike convention-based approaches. Unless the convention is really obvious or easy to air check, convention-based approaches often run into the problem where things go wrong, and if you don't know the convention, it's really hard to figure out what's wrong. If you can mitigate that problem, convention-based is okay. It's just oftentimes it falls into that bit. Rate. Oh, sorry, I was actually talking about that. So relay commands, at the end of the day, the ICommand interface is wanting an execute method with a single parameter. Now, people often do overloads with 0 parameters because going from just saying I don't care about the parameter is an easy implementation. And so these ones here are hip to it. The relay command ones here, they also support async methods, so you can do that, and it knows how to do the wire up for async because that's a common type. But if you do something like this doesn't work, right? If you think about the concept of if you were to do this from a button click, like I don't know how I would try to bind that button thing. I've seen people do some wacky stuff with the command, because on a button, you've got your command property, which is where the relay command goes. And then you've got your command parameter, which is the parameter that goes into the relay command. Unless, of course, it doesn't take any, and then the parameter gets discarded. In this case, I don't know what, like, there's one command parameter. I don't know how you think you're getting 2 parameters. So, I like this one. That one makes me happy. Let's see. Let's see. The source generator requires consuming projects to set the C# lang version to at least C# 8 or above. Interesting. I wonder what they need in C# 8. Interesting. I'm curious why it has to be set to 8. Now, my opinion is people should be revving to the latest language version always. The only reason I have come across to not automatically rev my lang version when new versions come out is if people on the team are unable to update to the newer compiler. People often get confused and think, oh, well, if I go up to C#11, that means I have to use .NET 7. No, no, no. You can do those things independently. So it's very valid to maybe not rev your projects to the latest version of .NET because you have to have backwards compatibility. Maybe there's big impact for consumers, that kind of thing. You got to do those upgrades a little slower. That all makes sense, right? You can't always rev your target framework as quick as you can rev your language version. But you can have like lang version C#11 and target even something as old as like .NET Framework 4.6.2. I think that one's still unsupported, but again, new language version, old framework. Those can be done. All it requires is everybody working on the project has to have tooling that supports that newer version of C#. So it does tend to mean that you do have to update it. Hey, Jared. Welcome. But yeah, so curious to, I don't quite know why they did 8. I'm wondering if 8 is just the oldest one they were willing to go back to. 8's, how old is 8 now? Because we just did C#11 in November. So that would have been 2022. So C#8 should have come out November-ish, 3 years prior. So 2019. And it is probably unlikely that somebody is able to update their NuGet packages, but not update their lang version. One of the few examples I have come across, though, is people who are forced to stay on older versions of Visual Studio due to some third-party dependency. Of maybe you've got this Visual Studio extension that you need for some reason. It hasn't been updated, or maybe, you know, the company hasn't bought a newer version, and so you're forced to be on this old dependency, and that holds you back. That's the only reason I've seen where it's not possible to easily rev your lang version. Okay, let's check. What else we got? I love these things. Let's see. The CanExecute name in the must to for valid member. Oh, yes. Okay, so when generating relay commands, let's actually do this one real quick. We should be able to show this thing off now. Let's show it off. Show off the coolness. So for example, I've got this increment count, right? So when I click the button, I'm going to turn this off real quick. Make sure I'm not there. Fire this up. Oh, target recipient has already subscribed. Yep, I have already subscribed to a lot of messages. I'm going to just comment these out. Why do you keep opening over there? Okay, there we go. So this button, this click me button, is wired up to this increment count relay command. So when I click, the count's going ++. Okay. Now, if I want to, what I can do is I can say, okay, my CanExecute is going to be controlled by, and I usually just do this, bool can increment count, and we'll just say return true if count is less than 10. Right, so you can only increment. 10 is as high as we're going to go, and that's the end of it. All right, so we'll do that. Fire this guy up. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then you'll note no more clicking. We can no longer execute the CanExecute. Great, fine. There is a small issue here in that you'll note, even though I can't increment, the button's not disabled. We'll fix that in a second. We should probably show that off anyway. This is probably something I might want to leave in the demo. But the analyzer here is ultimately flagging the idea of this method name. So now typically you should use name of. This is a case where the method name is expected to match hard-coded strings bad because I can't spell, and I might hypothetically spell increment with an I. That's not good. I can't spell. That's a common problem. And now at least I get an appropriate word to say, hang on. You told me to wire up to can increment, not increment. Therefore, that's a problem. Fix it. Now, again, the general solution is you use name of, and the problem goes away. Well, or let me rephrase. The problem shifts to the compiler whacking you upside the head rather than an analyzer. In either case, rather useful. Let's fix that issue I was mentioning a second ago. So the problem being is that this thing's CanExecute isn't appropriately telling the button that it has changed. And I believe it is, what is it? Notify. What is the notify CanExecute changed for there? That long name. Wow. Copilot, you're getting close. Clear count command. Try that. That is what it is, right? Oh, I'm sorry. Increment count command. Not clear count command. So when the property changes, notify that the CanExecute should be reevaluated for the command. Now what we should see happen. Sorry. Caffeine is important. Now when we click up to 10, you'll note now it appropriately has told the command, hey, reevaluate yourself. Your CanExecute may be different. And it goes, oh, gotcha. I check. CanExecute is now returning false. Therefore, I disable the button. Right? And then I can clear the count and we can go again. So this is probably, I may lower this count just so that it is reasonable. Because I think showing this off here is probably a very easy way of doing it. This whole thing is a template that is basically built around the idea of Kevin's opinion of what of how you should structure things, or Kevin's opinion of how I like to structure things. Okay, cool. Okay, so like that makes me happy. That makes me happy a lot. There are two members named Foo, so the match is ambiguous. Oh, that's a good one. I hadn't considered that. So in this case, name of. Yeah, so let's show this real quick. If we do this, or I guess maybe we'll just stick with my other one. So if I do can increment count, right? And I make it a property. Hang on, how does that work? Private bool. Does this even compile? I'm now confused as to how this thing. Huh. Interesting. This doesn't even compile. I'm not sure how useful that analyzer is. Where did that go? How many tabs? Sample view model. It must refer to a single compatible member. But I don't think you can get yourself into this situation. I'm trying to think how I would declare something where name of is ambiguous. Because at the end of the day, the compiler also has to resolve this. Now, the compiler may be a little more friendly because name of, if two members have the same name, it doesn't matter which one it picks. They're both going to have the same string. Is there actually a unit test for this? Look at that. Look at that. Well then, let's go a spelunking. How did you write a unit test for this? Oh, I have a hunch. I know exactly how we did this. Yeah, I have a suspicion that this thing is actually throwing both errors. So yes, the analyzer is appropriately flagging it, but the compiler isn't going to let it fly anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Huh. I don't think this one is overly useful, and I might need to think on it. What cases could... Okay, now I have to figure this out. What cases could I get two members with identical names already contains a definition for foo. How? So the only other type of member I could do is that. I could try vent. But in all of these cases, I could do static. Oh, if I do int. Oh, this is how you could do it. Overloads. Got it, got it, got it. So you could do this with overloads. So if I did this, that's how you trigger it. That's how you trigger it. So I don't like the sample. And I think the test is flawed, but this one, so even though name of can figure out, and it doesn't matter which one it picks, because it doesn't matter in terms of the compiler populating this name of, because the compiler, when you use name of, literally just slaps in the string. Like it's no more complicated than that. It just means that because the compiler looks up the string from whatever identifier is inside of here, it means that you can't put an identifier that doesn't exist in your code. It'll force it to actually be there. And more importantly, things like refactoring tools then will change your name of and that kind of thing. But this now appropriately triggers the warning with the overload. Ah, interesting. Okay. Good to know. So I would propose that this example should be changed to use method overloading so that it actually compiles, but it is valid. Okay. Cool. Compatible member. So yeah, in order to, the CanExecute has to look at something that returns a bool. So it needs to be a method or property, and it has to be a bool return. Great. That makes sense. Allow concurrent executions. Got it. So the concurrency stuff is all around if you have asynchronous methods that you're going to wire up with your relay commands. Because the when you do async and await, the source generator can handle things like if I click a button. So let's imagine I click a button, I go and do some asynchronous operation. What should happen if I click the button a second time? Right? Should that cancel the prior operation? Should the button be disabled while the current one's going? Like all of those things, depending on your context, could be the right answer. Right? I've got apps where either one of those could be correct depending on which button exactly we're talking about. But there's these attributes on the relay command for like allow concurrent executions that just don't make any sense if this isn't an asynchronous thing. Right? I was doing a code review the other day and I saw somebody pass a cancellation token into a non-asynchronous method and I went, what? I was very confused. It was a mistake and it got fixed, but it was one of those like things like cancellation tokens and non-async methods typically are going to be wrong. It's not something that outside of extenuating circumstances, it's one of those things when I see it, it makes me look closer to go, wait, what? Let's see. Target method is synchronous, so no cancellation command can be generated. Yep, same type of thing. Extra cancellation features. I am a little surprised that all of these analyzers, I sort of expected some pattern of grouping in here, but it doesn't appear like there's any grouping, which isn't horrible, but it's kind of nice when analyzers like performance-based ones get grouped together, reliability-based ones get grouped together, and that kind of thing. But got it. So if you are naming your fields weirdly and not using one of the common patterns, you get a warning now. This will annoy some people. I know people name fields like this at times. I don't like it, but I know I've seen it used. Let's see. The containing type is no property named. Yeah, so that's just, once again, name of solves this problem at the compiler level. Oh yeah, don't pass null for something that wants a string. Though if you've got nullable reference types turned on and elevate those warnings to errors, not a big deal. Containing type has no command named foobar. That's pretty much the same thing, different example. Let's see. Don't put this attribute on something that already contains it. Great. Same thing here. Observable INotify property changed is effectively the base of the observable object, so this is just WADI. Oh, I just realized something. I used jargon and I didn't define it. For anyone who does not know the term WAT, I give you permission. Pause my video, go watch that, come back in about 6 minutes. It's well worth your time. Don't be drinking anything while you watch it. You will likely spit up your drink laughing. Just going to warn you up front. It is very, very worth it. Okay, where'd I go? Okay, where are we at? 19 out of 35. Cool. Observable property must contain that implements. Right. You cannot use this attribute inside of something that it doesn't know how to register or generate the INotify property change stuff for. That makes sense. That makes sense. This is fields not annotated, cannot use. Right. If you're not an observable property, this attribute makes no sense. Cannot apply observable recipient to a type that already inherits. Yup. Makes sense. Because there'll be collisions. I mean, in some of these cases, like this one here, if the generator actually, like, there's two ways the generator could handle this. It could blind generate it, and then you just get a compile error because you've got duplicate members. Like, that's bad. Don't do that. Yeah. Let's see. Field annotations must be contained in type. Yep. So like how we saw on that observable recipients, how it has like a broadcast message to use the iMessenger to post out property change notifications. That's needed. Great. Not have an overload of a command method. Ah, right. Okay. So this relay command attribute, it has to generate a property, a relay command property so that you have something to bind to. And it uses method name and then suffix it with the word command. So this would generate the greet user command property for you. Problem is if you have an overload, that doesn't work because now you're going to end up having two properties with the same name. What is this? This field observable cannot result in a property name or have a type that would cause conflicts with other generated members. This field would generate a property named property, yes, which would cause the generated partial on property changed method to collide with the base helper method. Ah, interesting. So because of the naming that the generator uses for the observable property, because like we saw over here, Community Toolkit, be big. Let's see, observable property generator. So when you have a field and you decorate it, it generates the on count changing. But count is coming from that field name. And if your field was named property, you would have an on property changing, which would then collide with on property changing. Or on property changed. Multiple collisions. Collision's bad. Right? Can't use that if you don't have observable validator, similar to what we saw before. Let's see. That don't have any validation attributes. Yeah. So trying to use notified data error info. This is a good question, and I don't know if people are interested in seeing this. Is my demo does not do any validation, and I'm wondering if maybe I should add in. I'm wondering if I should have two project templates. One that's very simplistic like this, and one that's like a much more built-out WPF app. Like something with a form, maybe a pseudo login thing, some HTTP client action, all of that stuff to show samples of all the things. My thought, though, is most of the time people don't want those, but people use the samples for different things. Some people want to learn from the sample. Some people want to use the sample and just start plugging their own stuff in. Okay, let's blow through these real quick. Observable validator. Notify property change recipients. Great. Notify data error info. Relay command. Classes with no base type should prefer inheriting. Yep. Pretty sure this is the one I ran right amok of. Don't do this. Do this. Let's see. Yep, same thing, different context. Fields should not be directly referenced. Yes. Now, I will say there are times where you may want to do this. Like there are legitimate cases that I have found where I intentionally want to assign a value to the field and I do not want to raise INotify property changed. Typically, these are cases where I'm going to do like a bulk update to go through and do it. Windows Template Studio, great call out. Yes. So I have looked at this, and at one point in time, I had attempted to submit a suggestion for this. The problem being is that there is a low commitment to investment in WPF stuff in here. And I also received some pushback from people when I had suggested a sample app that used the MaterialDesign and XAML project. Some people really don't like the idea of Google's design paradigm in Windows. I do not understand that argument. Like the argument goes something along the lines of, I'm on Windows, therefore I want it to look like a native Windows app. Like, for example, I want it to look like the Fluent design that Microsoft did for like the calculator and all of those apps, which is great. Like Fluent design looks great. No problem with it. However, I would argue that when you tell people this is the one right way to do the design paradigm, yeah, designers are a creative bunch, and they don't do well with the this is the one right way option. So I would love to see some things in here. And I've contemplated, and this might be worth exploring a little bit. I don't know if people want a GUI like this, or if people just want a very simplistic a .NET new template. So I think we just burned through all of these, didn't we? I think so. Yeah, that's 35. Okay, so let me show what I'm talking about with this template. Let me show. So cd let's see, mkdir template demo. All right, so I made new directory called template demo, and then I'm gonna do .NET new kaboo.wpf. This is not a published template yet. Give me a few days. It will be. Boom. Yeah, so aside from the fact that my NuGet config is crap, aside from the fact that I need to get that working, and I do not understand what breakpoints Visual Studio is convinced it needs to load, but it keeps erroring about breakpoints. I don't understand why. So you'll note, brand new thing, .NET new, I get this out of the box. So this is the WPF template that I've been working on putting together. Material WPF. So I thought about that, and because this started with the idea of there was a request at one point for to add some .NET new templates specifically for the Material Design and XAML project, and I started down that path. The problem is this is a little bigger than just the Material Design project. So if I was just doing the Material Design project as a template, I would go through, I would do the application resources, the resource dictionary. Ooh, my indentations. Ooh, I gotta fix that too. Indentation, not the way I like it. I would set up something like this. I would set up your main window. I would go through, and on the main window, I might do things like the style and that kind of thing. But the Material Design project doesn't. It's a design setup to make your app look pretty, but it's not expected to be like that full MVVM type experience, right? And we'll compile and make sure it all builds. It should work just fine. There we are. Huzzah. And so I started down that path of, well, maybe it would be nice to have a simple template for WPF. And I was like, really what I want is I want a sample app that I can do, like when people ask me or I want to set up one of my demo apps in my repo, I oftentimes get really annoyed having to set up my demos because it's file new project, go bring in all the NuGet packages, get all of that stuff set up. It's like, it's so much, there's so much boilerplate. Yeah, or Material WPF MVVM. And I could certainly go down that path, and maybe that might be a better way of doing it, but I have ideas for templates that maybe it will extend beyond just WPF. Like I've been playing around with Blazor, and I've now started to get myself into the situation where there's a particular set of packages I like to pull in on a Blazor project, and a particular way I like to set that up. And I want to get this thing added with like an optional switch for you can turn on GitHub Actions and that kind of thing. Like there's all of this stuff that I kind of wish, like all of the pieces are there, but I have yet to find a template that brings them all together, because this thing also goes through and sets up the generic host pattern so that I can register up all of my DI stuff. And this then comes with the wonderful perk of I can now do my view objects like this, where my main window is no longer an empty constructor. My main window has a constructor, which is pretty slick, because now I can DI all the things all the way in. Doesn't solve it if you need a DI component in like a markup extension or something, but it at least gets you on the right path of going down. And I tried to set this so that it would have those type of samples in mind. And then as part of this, I tried to make sure I was documenting everything as I went, so that, because this is my opinion of what a proper setup should look like, this thing is heavily coded in opinion. And yes, designer. And we can go through and do, like, for example, I change this. Designer builds, designer works. I will say, when I saw this pattern, I poached some. I'm trying to remember where I got all of it from. I poached some of it from how I saw the Maui apps doing the structure. Then there was, I think it was a blog post I found online that showed something similar, and I went, oh, I'm using that. But this, to get this nice setup, is kind of a pain, and there's a few little gotchas all the way down this path, right? Is in order to get this to set up, you have to do your main window stuff somewhat manually. You have to come in here and where is it? There is the, where do I turn off the, oh, it's in the CS proj, if I remember right. You have to go through and set your startup object, and then you have to remove, normally the default application template has a startup URI guy here. right? That will point to your main window. So if you do file new project with the WPF app, you'll get that as well. You have to delete that. So there's all these little gotchas to set this pattern up. But once it's set up, it's really nice. Let's see. If a view model needs to be asynchronously initialized and set to a view, does your initializer support this? Or the host builder? No. No, it doesn't. And so that is one thing that is not plugged in here that some other libraries give you. Like, for example, Prism gives you things gives you more functionality around lifetime management. So being able to have your view model effectively get notified on like load or unload. With that said, doing things like that isn't terribly difficult. Like, for example, if I ended up, this is very bad. If I wanted to go through and have like an asynchronous initialization on my view model, I might end up doing something like this, right? Now, worth noting, this is async void, so all the usual caveats with async void, but async void is meant for top level event handlers, right? But if you end up needing this, so in my experience, I don't need this sort of lifecycle event, right, on my view models. I don't need that. And in the few cases where I've run into needing something similar, I'll generally just do something like this in my view. Like, it's not hard for me to implement that same life cycle stuff. I don't need something automatically generated for me. I'll just wire up to the relevant things and let my view tell the view model what to do. So if my view model needs some sort of initialization, something like this will often work, because most of the time, the case that I'm thinking of where I needed asynchronous initialization in my view, it was going off, making a database call and pulling back some data. The thing is even though that was asynchronous initialization to some degree, I still wanted my view model created, and I still wanted to be able to pop up like the progress indicator while that asynchronous operation was happening. So being able to have it trigger based upon, say, load, start that asynchronous process, let the view model toggle the Boolean, but ultimately then the idea of I need asynchronous initialization, I really need a life cycle of invocation to come in and do it for me. And ultimately, under the hood, a lot of the other frameworks that give you that life cycle stuff, where you implement an interface and then they make the appropriate calls, all they're doing is something very similar to this. Is they're watching for a particular event and they're just forwarding everything in for you. So is it in the box? No. Can you build it? Yeah. But that is a very fair critique. There is not that kind of setup. The other thing that I like with this host builder is, even though the Microsoft DI container is somewhat limited in its features, you're not stuck with it. Like all of the same features that you see in the docs for ASP.NET Core for doing dependency injection, you can use that in WPF here. So obviously some of the services don't exist, right? Like HTTP context factory. There is no HTTP context inside of a WPF app. That service doesn't exist. However, all of the stuff where it's like, hey, I didn't want to use the Microsoft DI container. I like AutoFac. Let's plug AutoFac in instead. Great. You can take all of the same docs and NuGet packages for AutoFac to plug it in and just plug it in here. Because really, they're just using a generic host. We're just switching the host up to be a different one. So rather than it being a ASP.NET Core host or a Maui host or a Blazor WASM host, we just are using the generic host and saying, we're going to plug it in a WPF app instead. Okay, I kind of want to see about this demo. And I did go through, again, there's a lot of stuff in here that I have slapped in. I want to check and see. So my app.xaml wasn't indented properly, but that one was. I tried to leave things commented well enough so that if people wanted to come in here and change this, again, this was meant to be a starting point for people to take and run off with. And I will be curious to hear. I suspect as soon as I publish it because it's being written for users who are me, who look like me, who like to dev like me. So it's targeted at a very particular audience. However, other people may like it, and if there are requests to like have additional flags for turning bits on and off or slightly different versions of the template, I'm kind of okay with that. Like I want to put together a templates package that has all of the templates I like in it, and then just ship that. And again, it's targeted at me, so it's going to be a templates package that has all of my favorite templates. And then if other people want to use it, great. If not, it'll at least work for one person. Okay, so I want to go back here real quick. So I have, that's templates demo. Where is .NET templates? So this guy here, do I have you open already? I do. Okay, so I was getting the NuGet config, or I was trying to get the NuGet config set up. But I want to fix the indentation here. Why do I not have white space turned on? View toggle render white space. No, did I not just toggle? There, thank you. Let's see. So can I just format document? It'll work. Not quite. What did you do? It's not what I wanted. Want you indented 2 spaces. Very close to just opening you in Visual Studio and doing it there, but do it here. That goes like that, that goes like that, that goes like that, that goes like that. Let's see, so this backs up. Does that look off to me by 1? Because it is off by 1. Goes like that, that goes like that. Goes there. That goes like that, that goes like that, that goes like that. Okay, so that fixes all of that. That fixes there. It's there. This is going to be a quick lesson in .NET New Templates. So I've already spun the library. I've got the templates config. I've got this all set. Everyone's happy. Okay, step 1. Let's throw away template demo real quick. And we're going to do big, abusive, nuke all the things. Great. Okay. You can see I've got this on here already. Uninstall my package. Build the new version of the package. Install the package. New app. And away we go. And this is how hard it should be to build an app. That's my strong opinion. Once again, Visual Studio is unhappy about some random breakpoints that I have no idea what it's talking about. And it looks like it's picked up the NuGet config properly this time. I'm just going to check manage NuGet. Good. So it should only have the one source in there. It should be updated. That's perfect. The one thing I'm noticing it's missing is I don't see the NuGet config added into the solution. It's probably the only thing left. I think aside from that, and then wanting to plug in I think we were going to do a, wow, private bool can increment count, count less than 5. I think we're going to do that, and then I think we're going to do notify CanExecute change for name of increment count command, and just do that. That way there's at least a small sample of this. CanExecute name of can increment count. That goes like that. So this is what I want. I guess I can almost blind copy at least this much of it straight into my template. Main window view model. Do this. Paste. Yeah, I was wondering if I had copied that or not. Okay, so that goes all there. That goes all there. I do want to add you to the solution. Let's just open that up in templates, WPF app. Because this one does even go as, I should say, this template does have quite a bit in it, even going as far as to setting up how I like my editor config to be. So you'll note there's different settings for C# files, MS Build files, XML files, changing the indentation there. Same with your XAML files. Again, this is a highly opinionated on how Kevin likes it. Let's see here. Let's just make sure. Do we leave local? Probably not a bad thing. Probably not a bad thing. I usually get, I like to clean up every using that is not being used, but that's probably okay. Where was I going? Oh, right. I was going to add my existing item. I wanted the NuGet config added into here. Yeah, so I set up the NuGet config. Format that appropriately. That should have all of that. That should build that up. I think that's probably pretty good. Okay, let's check this in. Let's see. Why are you on top? Go away. Let's see. Move my big head off of my commit message. There was a cool blog post that a coworker shared about using ChatGPT to generate your commit messages. I don't want to. At some point, I want to plug that in and try it because it looks slick. So effectively, get commit hooks with ChatGPT to look at your changes and then gen the messages for you, which was absolutely sick. I thought that was amazing. One of the other things that I've been dreaming about building is I would love a code review tool that could synthesize a bunch of changes down to a very simplistic review. So for example, if I see a code review where there's a lot of, like, somebody had to do a refactor and there's a lot of common changes, I want to review the changes once and say, okay, yes, I get it. There was a refactor happening. This type of change, I expect to see that, across a bunch of files. Just mark all those as review, right? I'd love to have something synthesize a diff for me to get it down to just tell me what the key changes are, and I want to review those and then sign off on it, right? I think that would make code reviews so much nicer. Like, let the AI literally do what it does best, chug through a set of things, find me the different categories, and spit that back. So, pipe dream. If somebody wants to build that, I would become very happy. Updating the view model, adding NuGet config. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, so I think that gets it actually going. Sorry, I'm just seeing the little red check here, and I'm wondering, did I miss something? I did. Stage, amend, force push, force push, force push. I didn't see any mistakes. No mistakes. Perfect. See, we got the solution file in there. First try. There's no evidence to the contrary. Except for, like, the ref log. Cool. Okay, I think I like that. I think now the only question is actually, like, building and deploying it, and when should it actually deploy? Which is a great question. I think, if I remember correctly, is there a .NET NuGet push? Kind of like this idea. Kind of like this idea. Yeah, I think we're going to do this. You can look at what's a diff. It uses a... Well, now, hold the phone. Let's go take a quick... Code review AI assistant. So basically exactly what I've been wanting. Oh, this looks absolutely amazing. This looks absolutely amazing. Does it only work on GitHub or does it do Azure DevOps too? Keep is it 100% accurate? Well, no AI is going to be 100% accurate. Copilot's a perfect example. It's great until it's not. This looks very interesting. Okay, that is slick. That is... Yeah, we're sorry, that's good. That's gonna sit right over here. I think I'm gonna sign up for their free account and give that a run and see how it does. That looks really close to the ideal tool that I want. That looks very, very close. One of the other things I would love to have it do is, if it were possible to group types of changes together, because all the code review tools on like GitHub and DevOps, they have the ability to like mark files or changes as you've reviewed them. And I would love to be able to say, hey, hide everything. Like if you could group the changes by type or category, and then I say, yes, I approve of this category. Hide all of that stuff and only show me what remains, because that's the stuff that I now want to look at. Like I'd love to be able to review it at that level. Because as exciting as it is for PRs to always be tiny, they aren't always tiny. Like I did one earlier this week where there was a very problematic extension method in the repository. It worked, but it was one of those, it was really too easy to use it incorrectly. And so we decided, okay, we need to kill this off. The problem is you're deleting an API. And so then it meant that deletion then propagated through a whole bunch of files. And it was, I think there was only like 40 or 50 files it went through. And this is on a project with, I don't know, 16,000 unit tests. And the extension method was in the unit test project. So it wasn't that high of a risk. Like worst case scenario, we have unit testing problems. Okay. At least I know all of that code's running anyway. So it's like, I'm not that concerned that I broke anything, but it was a bigger PR, and it was kind of a pain to review. And it would have been much nicer if there was a way to say, okay, I get it. I don't need to look at every diff of a line that deletes this extension method. Right? Move on. Hide those ones from. But yeah, this AI summary thing, that looks really cool. That looks very, very cool to me. Okay. Where was I going? Don't need that. Don't need that. Guess I don't need either of those, so I'll close them both down. I'm thinking I want to try to publish this NuGet package, because if I don't publish it, it goes nowhere. Let's do this. Get me out of this view. Thank you. Let's go to GitHub. View origin on GitHub. That's what we want. We want to go here. I want to go actions. And I think I just want a... Isn't there just a regular .NET one? I thought there was just a like .NET NuGet package. Yeah, let's just do that. Okay. Okay, so on pull requests, run it. And I'm going to go shamelessly steal from one of my other repositories. So stand by one moment while I go shamelessly steal all my other stuff. I guess I can do it here. It's nothing fancy. Let's do XAML test. Is probably pretty close, I think. Oh, so step one, I want this. We're going to start there. Let's back this out. Back this out. I want add a file. Create new file. Oh, why am I doing this the hard way? Period key, get me into actual VS Code, because this is the happy land. Okay, now we do .github. We do new, and we call it endbot.yaml. And then we shamelessly copy from my other repo. Go perfect. I don't think we need that here. And we just tell the Pendabot that we would like to look stuff up. And then we're going to just put together a little pipeline real quick. Let's see. I think it's workflow or workflows? Plural. Good. Okay. And then we're going to go with, I don't know. Build.yaml. I never know what to call these files. Never know what to do. Okay, so we're just gonna once again shamelessly copy my other stuff and then delete everything I don't care about. Okay, paste. Okay, so this is my XAML test one. We're gonna ignore some of this because we don't care. Let's see, we're gonna do that. We're gonna do that. Let's see. So on push, on pull request, or if I run manually. This is another template that I want to put together is the .NET template that I tend to use for most things. So I don't want this, and I don't want this. And I actually question if anybody ever cares about that. Okay, so check out v3. We want that. I don't care about any of this versioning stuff. I do want setup.net, but I only need 7, I believe, for the purposes of this guy. I don't know if it matters that much. We don't even need you. We don't need a restore or a build or any of that. Like, we're literally going to do .NET publish. Straight up. No thinking. And we are going to do... I don't think I need that. I don't actually want to set the version here because I want it driven by this template CS proj instead. I do want the restore to trigger. I will set the configuration to release, even though it shouldn't matter for a templates repository. I think the only thing that's going to change is like the generated output directory. But we are going to do -O and go into I think we just want this. Let's just test that command really quick and make sure it does what I think it does. Let's see. So I expect to see. Where did that? Before I was just running .NET Publish. No, I was running .NET Pack. That's what it is. I want .NET Pack. I think that's what I want. Yeah, I just want .NET Pack, not Publish. Don't care about you. At some point, we'll need to write tests, but we don't have you. We don't have you. We don't have you. We don't have you. All of that goes away. We do upload artifacts. And we are going to do that. Our .NuGet package. I think I want to separate this guy out. We do need auto merge to pick up the dependabots. So what this auto merge will do is if dependabots PRs clear, it'll automatically trigger. We're gonna do publish. Paste that in for the moment. Let's see. Needs. Let's see. Build. Actually, we can just copy some of the stuff. We're gonna just do this here, and I want to grab. Where's my other window? What project was I just doing this on recently? I was doing this on another project. I guess the material design project has what I seek, albeit in a slightly more complicated form. Yeah. Kind of basically just want to do this maneuver. Stop it. Stop it. I just want to copy. Where are you being dumb? Copy. Thank you. Go away now. Paste that there for the moment. Okay, so we want you to be there. Let's see. Needs. It's just going to be build. The array is superfluous. Push NuGets. That's fine. Download name. NuGet, not NuGets. That'll work. I don't think we actually need to give it a path either. Let's see. We're going to just do that. NuGet API key. Well, I'll have to go get one. Skip duplicate. Push to NuGet.org. And we want this to only run if it's not a PR. We'll turn that off for PR builds. And then more importantly, even if it does run, it's going to skip duplicates, and away we go. Cool. I think all of that works. The only other thing we need, pull some of these down. I need to grab a path from NuGet.org. So stand by one moment while I detour for a quick second. That's not the right account. Let's try again. Here we go. I need a key. Create. We'll call it .NET templates. Sure. Package owner will be me. And then I want to limit this to, what is the name of this thing? Let's see. I don't want to limit it to that it can only do that one. Let's see. Copy that guy off onto different screen for the moment so that I don't. I'm going to do my best to not accidentally expose my key. That's the goal. That's really bad at it. Let's see. Go here. Go here, .NET templates, settings. Let's see, was it? No, secrets. Secrets and variables there. Repo secret. Let's see, NuGet. They call it NuGet. Well, API key. And then I'm going to take this to the side where it's not visible. I'm going to paste it, and I'm going to hit add the secret. And then we can bring this back. See that? I managed to do it without screwing up. That's a first for me. NuGet API key. Push. And we're good. So, with any luck, pushing GitHub action. Ship it. Okay, so if that worked as intended, oh, stop it. Where's the ungroup button? How do I ungroup you? Ungroup, thank you. We go back here. See if it worked. See if it worked. That seems a little too easy. A little bit. Let's see here. And then, assuming this goes, V1, I'll say this, V1 of the template will be out there. My hope is to be able to iterate on these things so that people can consume them. And I do appreciate the feedback, Mr. X, on the templates, because I will be curious to know. I think I'm in an abnormality where I do quite a few new WPF projects. I think I create more than the average person just due to the samples that I end up building. And I would be curious to know how many other people may or may not be in that boat, and what type of like what would you want that to look like? Holy cow. This is the terrifying part, because so I need to add a license to the package. But your package was pushed. Okay. That first time, one commit of the YAML file and it worked. I'm getting good at this. I'm getting there. I'm getting there. Let's see. Manage packages. Go. Okay, so let's look. We should see a don't see it in here. Show me just mine. Unlisted. Okay, so it just hasn't. It will appear in search results and will be available for insert. Okay, so it is there and it is on its way out. The other thing that needs to happen is the .NET templating engine needs to pick it up and add it into their repository and all of the needful that goes there. But I will be writing up a README for that as well, just so that it's there. And again, if people want to use this for WPF apps, great. Very happy to accept feedback. Feel free to post like an issue on the repo. Suggestions, comments, all of that is welcome. Like I said, I built this largely because me wanted it, but my goal is to start building out a few more of these, because I think there's going to be some reusability in here. I've done too many of the same thing too many times. For example, I was very close to writing a .NET new template for writing .NET new templates. That felt a little too recursive, but I was getting close. It's getting real close. So I'm thinking this will probably be how this ends up going out the door. But I've got ideas in my head of what I want to do for my libraries when I produce NuGet packages. Like there's a common set of infrastructure-y stuff that I always put in place on all of my library projects that go out as NuGet packages. And I've been very annoyed that they've all kind of gone different ways, and I want to standardize them all together and make it one. So I think that's where I'm going to end up going with this. Should include the SDK, to be honest. That is a good point. Yeah. Yeah, it would be very nice. I will say the .NET New templating stuff is really nice, but it is not overly, like, it's documented, but it feels like because it's targeted at a very small audience, there's certain assumptions that get made, and it is not as trivial as it should be. There's a lot of things that I feel like the tooling could just be better around. I was helping a colleague earlier. He had a very simple request of, hey, we want to show the build date on our app of when was this thing compiled, right? Just, kind of that checks and balances. Version numbers are great, but if you want the date, you have to then go and correlate that version number to when the thing built it. And it's like, no, we just want to embed it. And there's a nice simple way to do it with MS Build of slapping an assembly attribute in with that date. Great, works fine. But it took multiple steps, and I made the comment, I'm like, this really could be wrapped up in a NuGet package. And then we got into the discussion of, okay, well, how do you structure a NuGet package to include a targets file? How does a NuGet package pick up a props file? All of that kind of stuff. And it's like there should be a template for standing up a project that has that's ready to be published as a NuGet, that has all of those bits either included or commented out where you could easily turn them on or that kind of thing. So I want those things. I just don't know if they exist. Is there any way to put the template into Chocolatey? I don't think so. And the only reason I say that is the .NET New templating engine. The source of truth for it is NuGet.org. Now, both Chocolatey, because Chocolatey ends up wrapping things in a NuGet package-ish to do it. A Visual Studio template could certainly be there, or as an extension. That way, it shows up when you do file new project inside of Visual Studio. That would certainly be a possibility, and that would kind of fall in line with like that template studio that we looked at a little earlier, where rather than a command line way of spinning a new project, you've got a GUI where you can click on and you can pick your options and say, hey, I'm building an app and I kind of want this style of layout and that kind of thing. And I guess I'd be curious if people would be interested in having sort of that GUI picker experience for file new project. Because I think that's where the big question comes down, is how often are people doing file new project? Versus how often would you rather do file new project and get a starting project to work from? Or would you rather individual new templates? Because that's the other thing, is I would like to do the .NET New templates don't have to be at a project-y level. They can just gen a couple files. And so I've got a few things for like different patterns and whatnot where I want to just put those specific files into the template. That way it's like, oh, like for example, the GitHub Actions thing. Like I just spun a GitHub action for producing a NuGet package, and in a scary turn of events, it worked on the first try, which was terrifying. But I kind of want to wrap that pattern up into a template so that I can, new GitHub action NuGet, right? Of, hey, I'm producing a library thing. Spin me the GitHub action. I don't want to think too hard. Make it so. And just have it run. Like that would be, in my mind, that would be the pinnacle of it being really nice, because then it's not the full solution. It's not, file or brand new repo, run this command. It's now I kind of want this piece, and I'll take a little bit of this, and I'll take a little bit of that. So, but if people have feedback on like templates or things that you would like to see, I am very happy to take feedback on the repo as well. As you can see, the README on it is blank, so I need to. There should be some docs there. Like at a minimum, here's how you install it and use it. That much should pretty much be covered. There's no excuse for that. So, but the one user who's going to be really excited about this template is already smiling. You can tell. Great. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for coming and hanging out. Oh, I almost forgot something. I had a brain teaser up at the beginning. I never got back to it. Hang on, we'll go back to it real quick. Template demo. So, this, once again, yes, I understand Visual Studio. You don't know something about breakpoints. Okay, so this is a small brain teaser, but it is not hard. Fact, public void brain teaser. Okay, so very, very simple. You have a double foo. It is a nullable double. You have two strings. A gets foo, two string, and you have string B gets foo, two string. Okay, nothing overly fancy, right? So the question comes, what is the behavior of A and B? And obviously, anyone can plug this code in fairly easily and go and run it, and you can see it. But the question is, and I'm going to intentionally drag my feet for a moment to give people a little bit of time to think about it. If you don't want a spoiler, you'll want to hit the pause button in the next few seconds. Because this is one of those cases where C# added some nice syntax, and this is another thing I saw come up in the last couple of weeks in a code review. And I stared at it for a minute and went, hang on. Okay, get it. Like there was a little bit of processing because foo is null, and obviously, so in the code review, it was much more deeply nested, right? Like foo was a property on some other object and back and forth. So first guess, A null, B exception. That is not correct. And this is one of those cases where it gets really interesting to try to think through, because there's a lot of subtlety happening with just a couple characters. So in this case, the question mark here on string and double, it's important to call out that these are not the same thing. Right? So this double here is actually nullable double, whereas this question mark here is a nullable reference type. There is no equivalent type that I can swap it out for. And that subtle change is the key thing, to note here. So spoiler alert, if you're going to pause, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, solution. And so here's what we'll do. We'll debug onto this so that we can go through and look at it. Boom. And you'll note I set the breakpoint after B. So if we get to it, it did throw an exception. Boom. So A is in fact null, which I don't think A surprises people that much. B, however, is empty string. I've seen people guess null. I've seen people also guess 0 as well. And there's only a handful of guesses that you can kind of come up with. Null, 0, empty string, or exception, I think are the only... they're at least going to be the common ones. I think I've heard people guess all 4 of those. But this one ends up being empty string. And the reason that this ends up working, so nullable double, if we take a little look-see at this guy, you'll note this is a struct. It's a value type. Value types themselves cannot be null. And this is where things get weird, because foo is being assigned null. When you inspect it, foo is null. But this is a value type. And nullable of t gets special behavior. That's the kicker. And this line here is the reason for the behavior. The toString on nullable of t has been overridden. If it has a value, it will do the value of the toString. If it does not have a value, you get empty string back out. So that's the solution. That's the fun little behavioral kicker for you. So yeah. Anybody interested? Fun little brain teaser. Like I said, not hard to type and run to go and see, but I always like looking at these things and seeing how well the compiler inside my brain, like how much has my brain moved to match the runtime. Sometimes it's not that great. So, okay. Now I'll sign off. I showed the brain teaser at the beginning. I gotta at least make good on the promise to actually walk through it at the end. So once again, thank you everyone for coming hanging out. Always love the questions, the interaction. Hopefully that was interesting. Go check out the Community Toolkit MVVM library if you haven't done so already. Again, prior videos, the link will be down in the description. If you want to check out the previous reviews and examples that I've done, especially for people who are newer to WPF or MVVM, you will probably find those to be hopefully helpful, I would think. So with that, happy coding. I'll see everyone next time.